Hey everyone, my name is Nick and welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to take a deep dive into AHRIMAN and is he worth taking in your Thousand Sons armies. A lot of lists online these days are not including him, and I want to go through potentially the reasons why and just compare them to a regular Exalted Sorcerer and see why that is such a popular option. So let's get straight into it. So to go in depth with AHRIMAN, I really want to go and talk about his own particular stats and abilities, but in a comparison to a regular Exalted Sorcerer. What are we getting with AHRIMAN that we're not getting with an Exalted, and vice versa? So let's take a look at those stat lines. Just like an Exalted, AHRIMAN has two versions, one on disc and one on foot. And the stat lines are the same except for that movement ability that disc gives us the extra 6 inches. So AHRIMAN has a move of 6, a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2+, strength and toughness of 4, 6 wounds, 5 attacks, a leadership of 9 and a save of 3+, and also a 4+ invulnerable save granted by one of his abilities. On disc though, that exactly remains the same, but with a 12-inch move that disc gives us. That does change some of the abilities, and we'll talk about that in a second as well. So why are we just not seeing AHRIMAN compared to a regular Exalted Sorcerer on disc? Back in the previous edition and the previous codex, AHRIMAN was 100% auto-include. And looking through a number of different lists online, it just doesn't seem to be a popular choice anymore to include such a super character. So to do this then, we do need to do a full stat comparison. So just going back to AHRIMAN on disc versus Exalted on disc. 180 points for AHRIMAN, 125 for the Exalted, and the only difference is a base extra wound. So far, just looking at raw stats then, that 55 point difference gives us 1 wound. Obviously there's going to be a lot more to look at when it comes to abilities. Let's now take a look at their damage output, specifically melee, because they both come equipped bog standard with the same Inferno pistol, so they both do the same range damage, although the Exalted can take a couple of different options. But when it comes to melee, AHRIMAN strength 7, AP -1 with a flat damage of 3, compared to the Exalted, which has a damage of D3, so that the only difference there, flat 3 versus D3. However, the Exalted can have access to all the different relic staves, so that can vary the profile a little bit and give you some other additional options. AHRIMAN cannot take relics. So let's talk specifically about the abilities then. This is where we're going to see some variance, a little bit more variance than that 55 points alludes to. Both have access to Kabbalistic rituals, meaning you can spend those Cabal points on them. Both have Lord of the Thousand Sons aura ability. This gives us our reroll 1s to hit for all friendly models within 6 inches. And then both have Sigil of Corruption, giving us that 4+ invulnerable save I've mentioned before. The big change though comes with AHRIMAN, who is the Arch Sorcerer of Tzeentch. So every psychic test that is taken for this model, you can re-roll the test. That is one of the big differences for AHRIMAN. There is a minor change to the aura for those core units though. So AHRIMAN gives it to everybody, and Exalted will only give it to his fellow cult members, so it's not army-wide. And remember, it is only core units, so rubrics and scarabs and so on that have that core keyword. But the big point, as I mentioned, is that reroll of psychic tests. AHRIMAN has the ability to reroll all psychic tests, and he can cast a few, and I'll carry on to the differences between how many casts and denies in a second. But if you roll a very low-powered smite, and you think it's going to be an easy deny if the opponent has a sorcerer or an ability to roll a deny against it, you can just give yourself that chance to roll a little bit higher, right? So, or you give your chance to roll against a higher casting power. Those rerolls are pretty invaluable, but the question really comes down to it, and I'll summarise at the end: is it worth the points difference? So the other key difference then, AHRIMAN can cast 3 powers and deny 3 powers. And Exalted on disc, much lower in his ability, bog standard. He can cast 2 powers but only can deny 1. Now, when it comes to denying powers, the only time that's really going to become relevant is if you are against another psychic heavy army, where you're going to want to dish out a lot more denies. Now, in all honesty, you've got enough sorcerers in your army to not overly worry about how many deniers you need. You're going to have an army full of scarabs with aspiring sorcerers, full of Exalted, full of other means to be able to deny. So I'm not sure it's a huge advantage to be able to deny that many, but certainly casting a lot is very, very powerful. As a named character though, AHRIMAN is fixed as he is. You cannot make any adjustments to him. So you can't take relics, you can't take other traits and so on. He has a fixed trait if he's your warlord, which is otherworldly prescience, which gives you 3+ invulnerable save for 1 turn only. Now the Exalted Disc can take any trait, or if he's in a specific cult, that trait as well, or in replacement to, sorry, than the standard ones. So you can actually take that fixed trait of otherworldly prescience that AHRIMAN's got and give that to your Exalted just as much as AHRIMAN comes with it. But the difference here is that you can take Legion Command upgrades. So you can then cast 3 powers, the same as AHRIMAN does. It's going to cost you 25 points, taking you to 150. You can give yourselves an attack and a wound bonus, which actually makes your base stats more powerful than AHRIMAN for just 15 points, taking you to 140. Because if you remember earlier, the only difference between the Exalted and AHRIMAN base stat-wise was just that wound piece. So going to 140, which is still 40 points cheaper than AHRIMAN, you now have more attacks and the same wound count. And then with the other Legion Command Dilettante, you can take 2 relics. Now, it is a 35-point increase, taking you to 160, but that does give you the ability to boost that ability on the Exalted Sorcerer to something that could potentially rival AHRIMAN. So just as a brief summary then, there are pros and cons of AHRIMAN. So he can cast 3 and deny 3, he re-rolls all his casting, and has that flat 3 in damage when it comes to melee combat. The cons though, 20 to 55 points more than an Exalted. That is if you don't take any weapon upgrades on that Exalted to replace his pistol. But he can't take cult powers, relics or traits. That means he becomes a little bit less flexible depending on how you want to build your army compared to a regular Exalted. So putting all of that information together, is AHRIMAN worth it? That is the question of the video. And in all honesty, I can probably agree with why so many lists that you see online these days, and ones that are entering various competitive play, you're not seeing AHRIMAN in any lists compared to what you were seeing in the previous edition under the previous codex. I mean, let's not get wrong, he is a monster named character. He is the big named character other than Magnus for the Thousand Suns, and he is very, very powerful. That is what you expect from him. But when it comes to that competitive edge, or that your points investment versus damage output, and the flexibility that you get with a regular Exalted on a disc, I can see why people are dropping AHRIMAN. Most people are running like single detachments, that single battalion these days. Very rarely are you seeing a mixed two detachment list. And the main characters that you're seeing, or the main HQ options that you are seeing, are at least one Infernal Master, 1 or 2 Exalteds, usually on a disc. And if they're not taking that second Exalted, then they're taking a regular Sorcerer. And that seems to be the most common build for your HQ options out of a battalion. When it comes to list building, very rarely are you seeing AHRIMAN in any of those builds. And I think people have done this kind of points comparison exercise very similar to this video, and probably come to a very similar conclusion. He isn't quite worth the points compared to what you can do with an Exalted, with access to Legion Command and various other those stat changes that you can do to an Exalted, and you can really make them really, really cool. If you've seen my previous video on some of the super buffs that you can give to an Exalted Sorcerer, you can make them into proper beat sticks if you really want to. Yes, you don't have flat 3 damage, but you have abilities that really work, especially with like relic discs and some of the other abilities in that video. Go and watch that video. It's a really good breakdown of some of the builds that you can do to Exalteds to make them real heavy combat monsters. And overall, probably going to do you a lot more favours than AHRIMAN does at the moment. But that's my thoughts and opinions. As usual, I'd love to hear from you in the comment section what you think. Are you running AHRIMAN? Do you agree with what a lot of people are saying online? They're not including him in regular lists just because the Exalted Infernal Master combination is that much more points efficient in your armies. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. But I hope you enjoyed this breakdown. If you did, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you all on the next video.